Okay, next question. I took your Enneagram Tritype test version 8, which has been around a while now. I do change content periodically, but the physical structure of the test has not changed. Now, when I add the additional special notices that you can receive, we may have to do a version 9, depending on how extensive the change is. But content-wise, if you took the test earlier, like in 2020, it automatically updates your 2020 test, not just a recent test. So how the cards were improved, because I keep improving things. So then this person's saying that he was very surprised at how revealing it was and tested as a social 469, but he did receive 7 of the special notices, and he wanted to know what that meant. Now, when I originally had the test programmed to identify the patterns that only 6s and 9s use, occasionally some 3s, but they have 6 and 9 in the tritype. But what happened was that I put a little paragraph there, but people didn't even see it. So no matter what you have in your top blue banner is how you saw yourself and ultimately the cards you chose. But the little asterisks, the special notices, are really important. Initially, I had it programmed so if you met any of the criteria, you were given a notification. But some people could get 25 of them, and then it would just be pages of special notices, and they didn't get to their possible tritype. So then I thought, no, 1 is enough. You don't need to do it for every single one. But when I only had a program where 1 showed up, people didn't give it any significance. So then I went back to remembering what stands out for people. And it's a pattern of 7. So 3 could still be important, not important. And of course, 25, you invalidate it because it's just too many. But 7, you'll think, oh, wait, maybe there is something that I can learn here. So even if you had 25, it's going to stop at 7. So in this case, he said, does that mean I'm really a 649? Because I always thought I was a 6. Yes. So it just means that he liked the 4 cards. And when it came down to his final choices, he put the 4 above the 6. But he was right. He is the 6. People don't have a false positive with type 6. The false positives are type 8, type 7, and it used to be type 2, not as much anymore, but for sure type 4. So if you have a strong tritype, but I happen to mention you might really be leading with the 6 or 9, what's important to understand about that is that the primary types of 3, 6, and 9 become invisible because they're meant to be balanced, both wings, especially if you have the 3, 6, 9 tritype. You're just going to choose the type you identify with, and that may or may not be your type. And as I mentioned, you could have the INFP and not lead with 4, but you'll be a creative, individualistic version of your lead type, regardless. So he's right. And I guess I should have explained more about what that meant. So pay attention to those special notices. They just cannot show up unless you have used patterns that the other types don't use. So they're very meaningful. The only exception is with the type 2. The type 2 will book a session with me if they have the 2, 6, 9 tritype, because they won't be certain that they have the right type, because they will have received asterisks because of their 6 and 9. So with them, I'm just affirming that they are, in fact, leading with the 2. But the 2, 6, 9 tritype is very, very similar to one another. And it makes it harder to know your lead type. But if you have 6, and let's say both 6 and 9, you're going to identify with the strongest type in your tritype. And if you just have the 9, you'll usually choose 8 or 1. And if you have the 6, you'll choose 5 or 7. But what you can see and observe in your pattern is that when I gave you the Ennea spreads, which is a tab when you get your test results, Ennea spreads has everything that you chose and then ranked and stacked the highest of each pattern of 3. So I like it because it's a quick way to see everything that you did. But if you want to know exactly what you chose when, then you go to the tab called Show Answers. So with that, if you notice, like in the top 6-card spread, that there are 2 6 cards, you're 6 even if you don't think you are. To even have 1 6 card is alerting you that it could be in your tritype, and it usually is. But if you have 5, 6, and 7 in the top, it's still pointing to type 6. Why is that? Because the 6 is the type that's connected to both their wings of 5 and 7. So usually people will relate to a different one. But if you know 6 is in your tritype, you're way ahead of the game for most 6s. And it's not that 6s are not as aware. It's just that they're hyper aware of behaviors and possibilities. And so they're not aware that they are making their projected ideas based on people's behavior and what they project could go wrong. Now, sometimes people ask me, well, aren't 6s with a 7 wing positive and seeing positive projections? Well, of course, but 5, 6, and 7 are all dealing with their fear and their potential for chaos with the negative things that can go wrong. So the 5 is just overly preparing and needs to know everything, so they're not dependent on anyone. So they're totally self-sufficient. And the 7 is trying to know a little bit about everything so they can at least converse on any topic. But the 7 is saying, yeah, I want to project a positive future to deal with this negative possibility. And the 6 is noticing the positive possibilities, but they're concerned about the negative possibilities. So 5, 6, and 7 are all focused on what can go wrong. They're just managing it a different way. And remember that it's based on their projection. So we talk about the defense strategy of 6 being projection because they project the most and they use it as their lead defense strategy. So they're in the center that projects, and then they project to make sure they're not caught off guard. And that's why they don't see their type.